Hello, everyone, and welcome to History of Sport. Today, I will take you on a journey through time to the frozen landscapes of 19th century Canada to explore the birthplace of one of the world's most thrilling and fastest sports, ice hockey. Get ready to learn about historical rivalries, international disputes, and the incredible evolution of a game that has won the hearts of millions. Whether you're passionate about sports and history or are simply curious, this video is for you. And which aspect of hockey history surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments. Before we discuss modern hockey, we must take a step back several centuries. The idea of hitting a ball or object with a stick on an icy surface didn't originate in Canada in the 1800s. There were already games involving curved sticks and spheres in ancient Egypt and classical Greece. The Romans played a similar game called Paganica. However, it is in medieval Europe that we find the true ancestors of hockey. In the Netherlands, Kalven, a game played on frozen canals, has been played since the 14th century. Players use sticks to hit a ball and try to reach set goals. Meanwhile, in England and Scotland, shinty and bandy, team games involving curved sticks and a ball, were played. These sports were played on grassy fields in the summer and on frozen lakes and rivers in the winter. British immigrants brought these games to the North American colonies. British soldiers stationed in Canada, in particular, played versions of these sports on frozen lakes during the long Canadian winters. However, it is important to note that the Indigenous peoples of Canada also had their own stick and ball games. The Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia played a summer game that may have influenced the development of hockey. So, hockey didn't just appear out of thin air. It is the result of a cultural fusion, a melting pot of European and North American traditions that came together on Canadian ice rinks. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter. Where and when was modern hockey born? For a long time, the official response was Montreal, March 3, 1875. On that date, the first indoor ice hockey game with established rules took place at the Victoria Skating Rink in Montreal. McGill University student James Creighton organized the event, gathering 18 players to form two teams of 9. This match's key characteristic was revolutionary. Instead of a ball, a flat wooden disc was used. This was crucial because a ball could easily fly off the covered track and injure spectators. The puck remained low on the ice, making the game safer and more controllable. Ground rules were established, inspired in part by rugby and lacrosse. The match was played with 2 goals, even though nets did not yet exist. They were simply 2 posts driven into the ice. But here the controversy begins. Several Canadian cities claimed the title of Cradle of Hockey. Windsor, Nova Scotia, for example, claims that hockey originated there around 1800 when boys from King's College School played on Long Pond Lake. In 2002, the Society for International Hockey Research concluded that Windsor deserves recognition as the birthplace of hockey, prompting protests from Montreal and other cities. Kingston, Ontario claims that British soldiers played ice hockey in the harbour as early as the 1860s. Halifax also claims an important role in the game's development. The truth is that hockey probably developed organically in several locations in Canada at around the same time. Wherever there was ice and energetic young men with sticks, some form of play spontaneously arose. Montreal's significance lies not in the invention of the game, but in the codification of its rules and the organization of the sport. This is when hockey made the leap from a pastime to a structured sport. As hockey began to take shape as an organized sport, clear rules needed to be established. In 1877, students at McGill University in Montreal wrote the first printed rules of ice hockey. These, McGill rules, formed the foundation of the modern game. Let's take a look at some of the key features. The number of players. Initially, teams could have 9 players on each side. In 1886, the number of players per team was reduced to 7, and finally, in 1911, it was reduced again to 6 players per team. The puck, as mentioned, replacing the ball with a flat puck was a turning point. Early pucks were literally slices of wood, often made from branches. It was only later that vulcanized rubber began to be used, making the puck more consistent and durable. The sticks, the first hockey sticks, were naturally curved pieces of wood. Over time, players began shaping them specifically for the game, creating the distinctive L shape. The doors, the first goals, were simply two poles. In 1899, horizontal crossbars were added to create a rectangular structure. Goals were introduced to make it easier to identify them. Penalties. The concept of sending a player off for an infraction emerged early on, but the rules were very different. Initially, a player who was sent off could not be replaced for the rest of the game. It was only later that temporary penalties of 2, 5, or 10 minutes were introduced. Offside, one of the most complex rules in modern hockey, evolved over time. Early versions were very restrictive and similar to the offside rule in football at the time. It was only gradually that the blue line system we know today developed. Playing times. The first matches did not have a fixed duration. Games were played until a certain score was reached or until the players ran out of energy. It was only later that the 3 20-minute periods were standardized. In 1886, the Amateur Hockey Association of Canada was founded, becoming the first organized league. As Canada developed hockey, its southern neighbor took note. It didn't take long for the game to cross the border. Canadian students attending American universities introduced the United States to hockey. In 1893, 2 Yale University teams played what is considered the first hockey game in the United States. However, it was in Boston that hockey found its first real breeding ground. With its cold climate and cultural proximity to Canada, the city immediately embraced the sport. In 1896, the first American Hockey League, the U.S. Amateur Hockey Association, was founded. Amateur Hockey League. Other cities in the Northeast and Midwest quickly followed suit. Detroit, Chicago, New York, and Minneapolis all developed lively hockey scenes. Universities played a crucial role in this development. Harvard, Princeton, and other prestigious institutions formed teams, lending respectability to the new sport. A pivotal moment came in 1903 with the construction of the first artificially refrigerated hockey stadium in the United States, the St. Nicholas Rink in New York City. Before then, teams depended entirely on natural ice, which limited the season to the colder months. Artificial ice revolutionized everything, allowing matches even when temperatures were mild. In 1917, the National Hockey League, NHL, was founded, originally consisting only of Canadian teams but soon incorporating American clubs. The Boston Bruins became the NHL's first American team in 1924, followed by the New York Rangers, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Detroit Red Wings. The United States has contributed significantly to the evolution of hockey. They introduced innovations in equipment, improved ice refrigeration techniques, and developed new game strategies. The relationship between Canada and the United States in hockey became a creative partnership that enriched both nations. One fascinating aspect of hockey history is the evolution of protective equipment. By modern standards, early hockey players were a bit crazy. Imagine skating at full speed on the ice while a rubber disc flies at you at 150 km per hour, and you're surrounded by dangerously shaking sticks. And you're practically naked. Hockey pioneers played in regular clothes. They had no helmets, no facial protection, and often not even adequate gloves. Goalkeepers wore the same equipment as other players. Pure madness. Injuries were commonplace. Broken teeth, fractured bones, and deep cuts were all part of the game. Some players bore impressive scars as medals of honor. The first big change came with the introduction of gloves. Players started wearing them to protect their hands from the cold and blows from sticks. Over time, these gloves evolved to become more padded and protective. Leggings were another early innovation, particularly for goalkeepers. The first leggings were made of strips of leather and felt. In 1896, goalkeepers started using cricket-specific leggings, which provided better protection. Goalkeeper masks have an incredible history. For decades, goalkeepers played with their faces uncovered, which predictably resulted in injury. Jacques Plante of the Montreal Canadiens was the first NHL goaltender to regularly wear a mask in 1959 after he was shot in the face and broke his nose. It took even longer for helmets to become mandatory. Many players believed that they limited visibility and hearing. It wasn't until 1979 that the NHL made helmets mandatory, but only for new players. Craig MacTavish, who retired in 1997, was the last NHL player to play without a helmet. Thanks to technology, today's hockey equipment is extremely sophisticated, featuring ultralight composite materials, gel padding, and helmets with integrated protection. A frequently overlooked aspect of hockey history concerns women, who have played hockey for nearly as long as the game has existed. The earliest records of women playing hockey date back to the 1890s. The first documented women's hockey game was played in Montreal in 1892. The players wore long Victorian skirts and corsets, not exactly ideal clothing for playing hockey. Despite social restrictions of the time that considered sports inappropriate for women, women's hockey grew rapidly. Universities such as McGill and Queen's formed women's teams. By 1920, several women's leagues had formed in Canada. However, it was not an easy journey. Women faced constant prejudice. They were often ridiculed by the press. Playing spaces were limited, equipment was inadequate, and financial support was virtually non-existent. For decades, women's hockey remained in the shadows. But the players persisted, keeping the tradition alive. In 1987, the first official Women's World Hockey Championship was organized. In 1998, women's hockey became an Olympic sport. Today, players like Hayley Wickenheiser and Cami Granato are respected legends. Although women's hockey continues to fight for equal resources and media attention, it has grown enormously in popularity and quality. Although hockey originated in Canada, it did not remain confined to North America for long. Its universal appeal, speed, skill, and intensity attracted enthusiasts worldwide. Europe was the first continent beyond North America to embrace hockey. Unsurprisingly, the Scandinavian and Eastern European countries, with their harsh winters, were particularly receptive. Russia and the Soviet Union developed a distinctive style of play that dominated international hockey for decades. The Soviet program, which began in the 1940s, emphasized teamwork, skating technique, and physical conditioning. The legendary matches between the USSR and Canada in the 1970s were some of the most exciting moments in hockey history. Sweden, Finland, and the Czech Republic developed respected hockey traditions and produced world-class champions. These countries contributed tactical and technical innovations that enriched the global game. Despite its small size, Switzerland became a European power. Even countries such as Italy, France, and Germany developed competitive leagues. Outside of Europe, hockey has made progress in unexpected places. Japan has a long hockey tradition dating back to the 1920s. Australia developed ice hockey despite its hot climate thanks to artificial refrigeration. The 1990s and 2000s saw a real global explosion of hockey. The internationalization of the NHL, which began attracting top talent from every continent, turned hockey into a worldwide phenomenon. Today, the International Ice Hockey Federation has over 80 member nations. From the deserts of Arizona to the metropolises of Asia, hockey is played wherever there is artificial ice. And here we are, at the end of our journey. We've seen how this extraordinary sport emerged from the fusion of ancient European traditions and the pioneering spirit of North America. We discovered the controversies surrounding its origins and the cities competing for the title of hockey's birthplace. We followed the codification of the first rules in Montreal. We have seen how equipment evolved from virtually non-existent to sophisticated, modern armor. We celebrated the women who fought for their place on the ice and the global expansion that transformed a Canadian game into a worldwide phenomenon. Above all, however, we have come to understand that hockey is much more than just a sport. It is a cultural tradition and a rite of passage for millions of young people. It is also a source of national identity for Canada and a passion shared by people in every corner of the planet. From Canada's natural ice lakes to today's ultramodern stadiums, hockey's essence remains the same: speed, technique, physical courage, and unparalleled team spirit. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content on the history of sports.